Good afternoon, and thanks for joining the Go Procure webinar on procurement innovation. This is our monthly look at innovative programs within procurement, sourcing, supply chain, and finance. And this is our inaugural one, as we'll be running these series monthly. I'm very excited today to have our first guest, Christina Morrow, Director of Global Procurement from RICO. How are you doing, Christina?
I'm great. Thank you, Raj. Thanks for having me.
Great. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background in procurement as well as what you're currently doing for RICO?
Sure. So I've been at RICO for 19 years, and in all of those years, I have been within the procurement department, starting as a buyer and progressing into different roles, as my most recent role being global procurement director of indirect procurement in a global role. So I have responsibility of all of our indirect procurement, looking at it on a strategic level, as well as having responsibility for the supplier diversity program within RICO.
Yeah, Christina's being very humble. It's a very large role that she has. It's not only for the domestic portion of RICO, but as most of you are well aware, and you will probably see here in the next couple seconds, the footprint that RICO has worldwide, even with just their central units as well as all their sales units. So once again, Christina, thank you so much for joining. By the way, my name is Raj Verma. I am the VP of Procurement Services for GoProcure. I have spent 25 years in supply chain procurement and sourcing. And today we will take you on a journey on these key webinar topics focused on what RICO is doing from a supply chain and diversity standpoint, answer some questions that you may have in that space, talk about procurement innovation and some of the areas that we see that are currently challenges for a number of organizations and what they can do to start moving up the maturity curve. And we will give a little tickler on a current cutting edge solution so that you can meet your finance team's goals as well as your inclusion goals. And that's what we're going to try to do on a monthly basis, is highlight programs that and solutions that can be taken to the market. So, always this is thematically someplace where we'll be for the better part of the next 2 to 3 years, is focused on innovation and transformation. And this is not just something that's within procurement or sourcing, but it is in your business, with your customers, with your stakeholders, with your partners. And if you're not continuously bringing something new or transforming, then things start getting stale. And for a lack of a better term, you'll start seeing rot and growth will start going away. And that's where competition comes in. So you should always be taking a look to innovate. Now, those ideas can come organically, they can come from internal, they can come from external, but there's always a point where you want to focus on innovation. Now, my firm, GoProcure, we have been a leader, a thought leader in procurement and sourcing for some extended period of time. And we have a number of different services that we offer to the market. Today, we'll be focusing more on the advisory side, but these are just kind of gives you an idea from sourcing to tail spend management and a very unique service offering from a buyer's desk perspective. Here's a quick lens about GoProcure's footprint here domestically, and you can see that there's a series of global clients there also where we have a footprint. And because of the work that the team and the leadership has put together, I'm happy to say that they've been recognized for some great accomplishments over the course of the years. So, Christina, I'd like to delve in a little bit more about RICO. I think most of our listeners probably do know about RICO and the wonderful products that you provide, but if you can give us kind of an overview of the firm and its footprint.
Sure. So RICO was founded in 1936. We have 92,000 employees worldwide. Our U.S. headquarters is based in Exton, Pennsylvania, which is outside of Philadelphia. And then our global headquarters is based in Tokyo. We're in about 200 countries across the globe. So we're in Asia Pac, Europe, Japan, Latin America, and then of course US and Canada. And in 2019, our fiscal year, we had $18.1 billion in sales.
Wow, that's very impressive. So I know that, we think when we think of RICO, we think of one solution, but I'd love to hear some of the other areas that you guys have started delving into.
Yeah, in fact, this year we actually recently launched our More Than Print campaign to really just show that we are much more than just providing the customer with printing devices. We really look to transform the workplace digitally. We have more than 1.29 million companies worldwide that are our customers. We really try to combine the right experts, services, and technology to optimize the flow of information to improve productivity.
It's very, very impressive for what you guys are accomplishing around the globe. And I know we kicked this off talking about innovation within the supply chain, as a large company. And, one of the easiest things to start doing is partnering with other large companies. And, today our focus is what are you doing with more the niche oriented, the smaller companies, specifically about supplier diversity. So if you can kind of highlight, what RICO has done in that space, we'd love to hear it.
Sure. So our diversity program has been in place since 2001. It is part of our larger diversity council, which actually started 20 years ago. Um, in that program, about 12% or $109 million of spend goes to diverse suppliers. And in calendar year 18, we had a 9% increase in spend. As you can see on this chart, we continue year over year since 2013 to really increase our spend. And we're hoping that our next milestone goal will be 115 million.
Yeah, we're
RICO corporate member of WeBank, as well as NMSDC on a local level with the New Jersey and New Jersey and New York chapter. We're also a corporate member of WeBank East, and we participate in all the conferences for both WeBank and NMSDC.
once again, Christina's being humble. Her organization is a tremendous thought leader in the diversity space, and when you go to these conferences, you can recognize that with the leaders, her peer leaders that show up and are very active with other suppliers as well as other corporates. And Christina's been recognized as one of the top women in the space. So thank you so much for what you provide to the diversity platforms. And I think we've talked offline in the past, and have delved in these programs. So what do you see are some of the key items that make these diverse suppliers successful at RICO?
Yeah, I think one of our keys is really that we have the executive sponsorship of the program. It just allows us to give visibility throughout the organization. Another key for us is that within our procurement process, we actually make sure that we include a diversity supplier in every RFP. So there's at least one diversity supplier present. So that really has helped us increase awareness and bring to the table just suppliers that our stakeholders may have not necessarily met in the past. These are normally suppliers that we meet at conferences and other networking events as well.
Is there any specific innovation that you want to highlight recently that you've been working on with any of these suppliers?
Yes, one big plus was in this past year, we actually were able to award our agency on record to a women-owned supplier. This partner is now assisting RICO with our new go-to-market campaign. Even though it's a very new relationship, we feel since they are smaller than your normal mega agency, they're able to just bring different voices to the table. They're bringing us with fresh new ideas, and they're really challenging us in a good way to look at things differently.
And along with those lines, I know that the role that you have in most procurement organizations, you have the the goals and objectives that are set out by your chief financial officer, and he or she is challenged with what is my stakeholder return on investment? What does my bottom line look like? How are we best investing? And then on the other side, you're focused on innovation and bringing in diverse vendors. How are you addressing the compliance piece of this as well as still getting cost savings?
Yeah, so from the compliance standpoint, it goes back to us having that sponsorship from the C-level. They really, they're on board with the vision that we have for procurement as well as supplier diversity, and they help us enforce the policies. I think for mandating for communication of the procurement policy has also helped us drive compliance. I feel having visibility in all contractual agreements, along with the expiration date, really allows procurement to work with the line of business stakeholders at the beginning of the process versus coming in at the 11th hour where we cannot always add value. I feel another key has been really being able to build confidence with the stakeholders that we as a procurement organization can really add value, not just through cost savings, but again, just bringing innovation and new ideas.
And are there any other areas that you're looking at, specifically to get more diverse vendors and that are innovative?
We are some of the big areas. There's other areas within marketing. We recently have an RFP out there for spend analytics, so we're seeing what can be brought to the table for there. We're also working with our supply chain on different areas within the recycling and scrap area. There's a couple women-owned businesses in that area that are participating in the RFP.
And it's great that you guys are looking at it from a strategic standpoint. Have you started taking a look at downstream some more of your tail spend area as well as those services?
We're starting to really just do a full analysis of all our spend. We're trying to identify where we have a lot of spend that is not necessarily under contract, and we're seeing what kind of solutions we can bring for the tail spend that will bring us savings as well as add diverse spend in those areas.
Great, great. Thank you so much for giving us a lens on, what's going on from a diversity standpoint and your journey. It's been a remarkable growth over the last couple of years, and considering, all the acquisitions and your global footprint, you guys have to be commended for what you've been able to accomplish so far. So, taking that journey with Rico, now what we want to kind of take a look at is it kind of highlighted in the very beginning that there are some models that exist and where companies kind of get caught within their own procurement space and where they need to move up the maturity curve. And we're going to be taking a look at this over the next couple months. And today we just want to kind of lay out how we see what a traditional, I don't want to use the word archaic, but traditional program focuses on when they first come in. And, I can highlight, talking to Christina all these years, they've already moved out of this space into, you're going to see the next slide, which focuses more on innovation. But one of the challenges that we've seen over and over is that once people start focusing just on their direct side, they just focus on strategic side, they start losing visibility on most of their spend. It becomes fragmented, and they don't have a pretty good lens on their total spend. And what I mean by that is their total purchasing power. They kind of start losing sight, and they start focusing on just 5 to 10 to 15% of their supply chain. Then the next kind of weakness, which you see within organizations, is they start losing line of sight within their C-suite. I think you heard Christina mention it over and over and over. She has C-suite buy-in all the way to the CEO. And when you don't have that and you can't really mandate impactful policies, I'm not talking about a mandated choice of supply chain, but what happens is then you have limited control, and you will have a number of suppliers that will start moving around to the line of business directly or escalating to try to get into your supply chain without having any visibility. The other thing that we've seen over the years is sporadic buying systems. And this, this happens organically, but when you put in your P2P, the immediate next thing is that you're going to find out that there's fiefdoms out there on how people are purchasing, whether people want a separate telecom, whether they want a separate expense unit, whether they want a separate travel system, a separate labor system. And some of those are rightfully valid because they provide exceptional domain expertise where the gap might be in the P2P side. But what you're going to start seeing in a matter of years is when they're not integrated, especially not at the P2P level or the ERP level, you don't have actionable data. And that's where your programs can start falling down. And then, once again, using Christina as an example, she has other value-added goals other than just cost with the suppliers. And that is absolutely a must if you're going to build a sustainable program with suppliers that are going to add value over time. If cost out is your only thing, then I would just suggest using auction, and that's all you should ever focus on. But then do not be shocked if the value of your quality starts suffering. Finally, with traditional procurement programs, and they're behind the times, I've seen fintech organizations start exponentially growing this space. There is no excuse for a billion-dollar firm not to have some sort of innovation or accelerator program that is helping them dig deep to improve their supply chain and as well as the products that they're going out. And I'm going to talk about that second because that's part of our title of revenue in this space. And then no focus on smaller suppliers. And you also recognize that these companies start treating the small suppliers the same way they do the large ones. And that's a failing proposition. So if you take a look at everything I just covered, a successful 2020 innovative program, and this can be a company that's 100 million all the way to 100 billion, alignment. We heard Rico say it. Christina kind of highlighted it, and she led off with it, is that she has line of sight both domestically as well as overseas, C-suite integration, and that needs to be there because at any given time, that opens the door to fiefdoms. I'm not saying a seat at the table, but it will open up opportunities for spend to go elsewhere. A robust program. I can't emphasize it enough. The partner. They're not just your vendor to beat on when you're looking for pricing, but you have to build a long-term sustainable relationship, not just with your top 10 largest suppliers. There needs to be a robust program that is just not thinking short-term results. Finally, an intuitive procurement system, and this kind of highlights what Christina talked about at the end, how they're looking to address tail. You need to make it very easy. And in the world of B2C commerce, where your partners internally are just buying very easily on their phones or at home, you need to give that same type of ability throughout your organization. And as we stressed earlier, cost can't be the driver. It's got to be value. You got to find a program where you're working with great partners that are providing value-added, long-term, sustainable, high-quality products. Number 5 is something we're going to dig in deep, both on our webinar and soon to be the Go Procure launch of a radio program. An accelerator innovative program will serve a company exponentially, both from what they can do internally, but they're partnering, and you're getting a new lens on potential new product revenue. And you've heard me say that. I've talked to a number of fintech companies, a number of financial institutions that have brought on vendors, that have brought in new products that are generating double-digit sales. And if you're not looking at that as your program, then you're going to be behind the times in a few years, because there's no reason that there's more innovation in the smaller firms that are out there that are incubating, that have the ability of bringing these things into the fold. So we'll talk about that in more depth as we kick off this monthly series. And then finally, focus on high-risk areas. You heard Christina, she's going after the tail for leakage. And I'm going to kind of talk about this area as a potential solution that we're going to talk about going into the future, is how can you take your high-risk area, focus it on compliance, focus it on cost savings, and bring diverse vendors in there. There's an innovative diversity solution that's being done by a number of partners, including Go Procure, on how to provide these direct opportunities. I know there's a bunch of Weebies and MBEs on the phone, a direct turnkey where you have access to spend that you never had access to. You have access to bids that you never had access to because now it's coming directly to you rather than going to the large provider. And that's a value to both the customer as well as yourself. And then along with that is the ability to get consulting advice, getting procurement and expertise that you have not sought in this program. And then finally, for the corporation, a turnkey method to increase your diversity spend. As you saw, Christina laid out a plan of trying to get to 115, and we know the number of firms that are trying to get to the billion-dollar roundtable. And we believe this turnkey innovative solution that we'll be talking about in the weeks to come is probably the best method to get there. And finally, just a lens, kind of a graphic of what I'm talking about as you see this area. It kind of gives that integration of an easy procurement system as we laid out, giving access to a number of products and services, giving diversity that's highly visible, giving them access, an automated purchase order to pay process, and managing all the risk. And then for our customers / suppliers, they have a no barrier to entry. They know that they're getting access to the table. There's a diversity preference for the corporates, very easy onboarding, and access to multiple firms and easy payment. I mean, isn't that something we all want? Isn't that the way to go? And as I said, that's something we're going to be talking about in the weeks and months to come. We see this as the innovative marketplace of the future. I'm very excited that GoProcure's platform is the one driving this. And this is something, we'll be talking more about in the near future. So saying all that, why don't we open the floor to some questions and answers? Or I should say, we'll be providing the answers. So I've got a couple questions that have been sent to me directly by our listeners. Christina, are you ready?
Sure.
Sure. So I guess one of the first questions I'm getting from an MBE is that when they come in to work with Rico at a conference or when they meet you after a conference, what are some of the guiding principles you can tell them that they should share with you when they meet you for the first time?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is really letting us understand what the capabilities are of your organization. So yes, being a diversity supplier is definitely, a plus, and we value that, but we need to understand the capabilities so we can know what the fit is, if it is a good fit. I think the other big thing is after we meet you is being able to provide your certification and then allowing us to vet you and see, if we have any upcoming RFPs or if we don't, making sure that we have you in our database. So when it is time for an RFP, we can include you.
Great. Great response. Did you guys all hear that? Capability, having that information ready. I think one thing I'd add on is don't try to boil the ocean. Be very specific and laser focused on the value you can provide to not only Rico, but the other corporates that you're trying to meet. And I think Christina was nice and she said it, but it is a relationship of trust, right? It's going to take some time to get in. So the expectation, unless something's happening right away, be patient, right? And I think that's one of the key elements. Okay, here's a question for me. On one of the last slides, the focus was how do we see tail spend moving into the future, and is this something that's going to continue to be an issue for large companies? I think we heard Christina mention it. It's a massive issue for a lot of organizations, Rico included, and I could list a number of our partners that we're currently working with. And without digging too far deep, as most people are aware, the tail basically is that space where there's leakage that takes place because companies have not really watched their P2P. They haven't gone out to bid for a while, and people are going around the side, and all of a sudden 80% of your supply base is outside your strategic and contracted areas. So this isn't going to change. I believe strongly, such as many of the analysts that are out there, that over the next 2 years, that this is a very hot area to address because of risk. And we highlighted that earlier. One thing to say cost savings, and some companies may save 3, 4, 5%, but risk is enormous. If you don't have full visibility to your tier one, tier two, or tier three, or leakage suppliers, and if you're like Rico, you're a global company, you don't know where your single source or somebody's going to go out of business, or the risk of being in a nation where you're not supposed to be doing business. And if you don't address that, then the potential of litigation is enormous. And that's why, from a spend management standpoint, tailed should be on every CPO's top pre-charter. Okay. Next question. Okay, this one's a little interesting. You ready, Christina?
Sure.
So when you had earlier said that you guys, or when Rico has a diverse vendor participate and at least one RFP each time, could you give a gauge on the areas where you may be seeing more diverse vendors? Where do you want to get more diverse vendors where there may not be as many? Did I frame the question right there, Christina?
Yes, it's not an easy answer, but I mean, it all depends what is coming up at that time. So, for example, when I spoke about the marketing, our agency, go-to-market agency that we selected a women-owned supplier for, we had an RFP that was out there because we were doing a full analysis of all our marketing spend, and that was an initiative that was coming from our CEO. It's hard for me to say what categories are going to be coming when, but what I can leave you with is that Rico is in process of really doing a full analysis of all our procurement spend, and we're looking for different areas where we think that there is an opportunity for cost savings, and it could be because we've had a relationship or a supplier in place for a very long time and it may be time to make a change, or it could be an area where we're using multiple suppliers for a service and we need to consolidate. So we may look at new suppliers for that, and that's when we would include a diversity supplier. So that might not have answered the question directly, but I hope that helped.
I think that was a great answer. So, I mean, nobody knows. I think for the MBEs and WBEs on the call, build a relationship, understand the value of what you provide, ask the question. Everybody, whether it's Christina or anybody, will be very open on timing. And I always advocate that. First, it's the information gathering and see if it's a value play, right? Okay, a question for GoProcure. With the GoProcure platform that you just mentioned at the end, would this be something that can work with current organizations that have P2Ps? Yes, that's what as I mentioned in the very beginning, the tools that exist serve a purpose. Every company starts with an ERP, or I should say they should, and then they have a HR system, and then they have their procure to pay, and the procure to pay traditionally addresses the direct and then the most strategic indirect categories. So if a company is on the ball and has the bandwidth and is doing sourcing correctly, then you traditionally won't have as much leakage. But as we all realize, there's challenges and priorities and bandwidth issues. So you start losing, and that's where a little bit of time in getting some of those categories, or your system might become archaic if you haven't launched a new version. So GoProcure has actively worked in many different environments with a number of different P2Ps that exist, and it's all the large players. You guys are all aware of them. The Rebas, the SAPs, the Oracles, the Emtorses, those are the Coupas. They all exist, and we are a complementary solution. Now, for the smaller firms that can't afford the larger P2Ps, GoProcure can rightfully handle both the what we would call all your spend in that case, but it is not a P2P, so just keep that in mind. So just want to make sure, we're up on 1:30. I know we have a few more minutes. I want to take any more. Let's see if we have anything else that's come up through the online. It looks like we've answered everything that has been provided to us. So Christina, I want to thank you. If there's any other words or pearls of wisdom you would like to leave our audience before we sign off for our first procurement innovation webinar.
I just want to thank you for having me, and I thank the audience for taking a few minutes out of their busy day to learn about this category.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Christina. And for those, as I stated earlier, thank you so much for joining. Christina and we will be replaying this for those who were not able to make it today in the next couple weeks, but we'll be available for questions. Furthermore, this will be a monthly series focused on innovation in the supply chain, innovation in the diversity space, and innovation within procurement. Coupled with this, we will be launching Procurement Innovation Today Radio, brought to you by GoProcure Radio Lab and Business Radio X out of Atlanta. That will be kicking off October 15th. That will be a monthly show where we'll be talking to chief financial officers, chief procurement officers about what they're doing, what they wish they could be doing. But the focus is mostly on from a business perspective. So once again, I want to thank everybody for taking time out of their busy day. Hopefully this was a value add to you. If you have any questions whatsoever, you can reach out to me at rverma@goprocure.com. That's rverma@goprocure.com. Thank you and have a great day.